Chapter 16, Lesson 1. War erupts. Main idea. The secession of the southern states quickly led to armed conflict between the North and the South. One American story. Like other South Carolinians, Emma Holmes got caught up in the passions that led her state to secede. In her diary, she wrote about South Carolina's attack on Fort Sumner, a federal fort in Charleston Harbor. A voice from the past. At 4:30 this morning, the heavy booming of cannons woke the city from its slumbers. Everybody seems relieved that what has been so long dreaded has come at last, and so confident of victory that they seem not to think of the danger of their friends. With a telescope I saw the shots as they struck the fort and saw the masonry crumbling. Emma Holmes, The Diary of Emma Holmes, 1861 to 1866. Many Southerners expected a short war that they would easily win. Northerners expected the same. In this section you will learn how the war started, how the states divided, and how each side planned to win. First shots at Fort Sumner. As they seceded from the Union, the states loyal to the United States of America, during the Civil War, the Southern states took over most of the federal forts inside their borders. President Abraham Lincoln had to decide what to do about the forts that remained under federal control. Major Robert Anderson and his garrison held on to Fort Sumner in the harbor of Charleston, South Carolina, but they were running out of supplies. If Lincoln supplies the garrison, he risked war. If he ordered the troops to leave the fort, he would be giving in to the rebels. Lincoln informed South Carolina that he was sending supply ships to Fort Sumner. Leaders of the Confederacy, the nation formed by the Southern states in 1861, decided to prevent the federal government from holding onto the fort by attacking before the supply ships arrived. At 4:30 a.m. on April 12, 1861, shore guns opened fire on the island fort. For 34 hours the Confederates fired shells into the fort until Anderson was forced to surrender. No one was killed, but the South attack on Fort Sumner was the beginning of the Civil War. Lincoln calls out the militia. 2 days after the surrender of Fort Sumner, President Lincoln asked the Union states to provide 75,000 militiamen for 90 days to put down the uprising in the South. Citizens of the North responded with enthusiasm to the call to arms. A New York woman wrote, "It seems as if we were never alive till now, never had a country till now." In the Upper South, however, state leaders responded with anger. The governor of Kentucky said that the state would furnish no troops for the wicked purpose of subduing her sister Southern states. In the weeks that followed, Virginia, North Carolina, Tennessee, and Arkansas voted to join the Confederacy. As each state seceded, volunteers rushed to enlist, just as citizens did in the North. A young Arkansas enlistee wrote, "So impatient did I become for starting that I felt like 10,000 pins were pricking me in every part of the body, and started off a week in advance of my brothers." Some feared the war would be over before they got the chance to fight. With Virginia on its side, the Confederacy had a much better chance for victory. Virginia was wealthy and populous, and the Confederacy, in May of 1861, moved its capital to Richmond. Virginia was also the home of Robert E. Lee, a talented military leader. When Virginia seceded, Lee resigned from the United States Army and joined the Confederacy. Although Lee opposed slavery and secession, he explained, "I cannot raise my hand against my birthplace, my home, my children." He eventually became the commanding general of the Army of Northern Virginia. Abraham Lincoln, 1809 to 1865. Today, Abraham Lincoln is considered one of the great men of all time. Yet early in his presidency, he was widely criticized and ridiculed. Critics labeled him ignorant, incompetent, and socially crude. As Lincoln grew into his job, however, he gained the respect and affection of many Northerners. Even as a youth, Lincoln had displayed a gift for public speaking. During the Civil War, through his speeches and writings, Lincoln inspired fellow Americans to dare to do our duty as we understand it. choosing sides. After Virginia seceded, both sides knew that the border states would play a key role in the war's outcome. The border states, Delaware, Maryland, Kentucky, and Missouri, were slave states that bordered states in which slavery was illegal. Because of their location and resources, the border states could tip the scales toward one side. Keeping Maryland in the Union was important for the North. If Maryland seceded, then Washington, D.C. would be cut off from the Union. To hold on to the state, Lincoln ordered the arrest of Maryland lawmakers who backed the South. Union forces arrested 31 secessionist members of the legislature. They were held for at least 2 months after the election of a new legislature. Kentucky was also important to both sides because of its rivers. For the Union, the rivers could provide an invasion route into the South. For the South, the rivers could provide a barrier. Kentuckians were deeply divided over secession. However, a Confederate invasion in 1861 prompted the state to stay in the Union. Both Missouri and Delaware also stayed in the Union. In Virginia, Federal troops helped a group of western counties break away. These counties formed the state of West Virginia and returned to the Union. In the end, 24 states made up the Union and 11 joined the Confederacy. Strengths and weaknesses. The Union had huge advantages in manpower and resources. The North had about 22 million people. The Confederacy had roughly 9 million, of whom about 3.5 million were slaves. About 85% of the nation's factories were located in the North. The North had more than double the railroad mileage of the South. Almost all naval power and shipyards belonged to the North. The Union's greatest asset, however, was President Abraham Lincoln. He developed into a remarkable leader. Lincoln convinced Northerners that democracy depended on preserving the Union. The Confederacy had some advantages too. It began the war with able generals such as Robert E. Lee. It also had the advantage of fighting a defensive war. This meant Northern supply lines would have to be stretched very far. In addition, soldiers defending their homes have more will to fight than invaders do. The Confederate strategy. At first, the Confederacy took a defensive position. It did not want to conquer the North. It only wanted to be independent. "All we ask is to be let alone," said Confederate President Jefferson Davis. Confederate leaders hoped the North would soon tire of the war and accept Southern independence. The South also depended on King cotton as a way to win foreign support. Cotton was king because Southern cotton was important in the world market. The South grew most of the cotton for Europe's textile mills. When the war broke out, Southern planters withheld cotton from the market. They hoped to force France and Britain to aid the Confederate cause. But in 1861, European nations had surplus cotton because of a big crop the year before. They did not want to get involved in the American War. As the war heated up, the South soon moved away from its cautious plans. It began to take the offensive and try for big victories to wreck Northern morale. The Union strategy. The North wanted to bring the Southern states back into the Union. To do this, the North developed an offensive strategy based on General Winfield Scott's Anaconda Plan. This plan was designed to smother the South's economy like a giant anaconda snake squeezing its prey. The plan called for a naval blockade of the South's coastline. In a blockade, armed forces prevent the transportation of goods or people into or out of an area. The plan also called for the Union to gain control of the Mississippi River. This would split the Confederacy in two. One of the drawbacks of Scott's plan was that it would take time to work, but many people, eager for action, were calling for an immediate attack of Richmond, the Confederate capital. Lincoln ordered an invasion of Virginia in the summer of 1861. Battle of Bull Run. To take Richmond, the Union Army would first have to defeat the Confederate troops stationed at the town of Manassas, Virginia. This was a railway center southwest of Washington, D.C. On July 21, 1861, Union forces commanded by General Irvin McDowell clashed with Confederate forces headed by General Pierre Beauregard near a little creek called Bull Run, north of Mancinus. In the North, this battle became known as the First Battle of Bull Run. At one point in the battle, a Confederate officer rallied his troops by pointing his sword toward Southern General Thomas J. Jackson. The officer cried, "There is Jackson standing on a stone wall. Rally behind the Virginians." From this incident, Jackson won the nickname Stonewall Jackson. His men held fast against the Union assault. As fresh troops arrived, the Confederates equaled the Union forces in number and launched a counterattack. Attacking the Union line, they let out a blood-curdling scream. The scream, later called the rebel yell, caused the Union troops to panic. They broke ranks and scattered. The Confederate victory in the First Battle of Bull Run thrilled the South and shocked the North. Many in the South thought the war was won. The North realized it had underestimated its opponent. Lincoln sent the 90-day militias home and called for a real army of 500,000 volunteers for 3 years. In the next section, you will learn what army life was